Hello everyone, it's TJ. Welcome back to my channel. It's awesome to see you again, or for you guys to see me again. Thank you to the subscribers that keep coming back. You blow my mind. I'm so appreciative of you guys. If you're new around here, give us a chance. You might hear a case that you haven't heard before. Just quickly before I get into this case, I've had a couple of comments about the quality of my videos and my editing and stuff like that. So I'm just a poor bloody student, but I do spend huge amounts of time on my channel and on my Facebook page keeping stories alive. I can't afford to get anyone to edit or help me with recordings. I'm not good at it, I know that, but the important thing for me is that I'm keeping these cases alive and I'm giving chances for people to see these cases, maybe for the family to find answers. That's all that matters to me anyway. So I'm sorry, but tis the way it is. Let's move on to the case. Just a little warning that this video does contain and we discuss mental health issues. If this is a problem for you, please don't watch the video. If it triggers anything, I have helplines in the description box below, so please use them. This case is about Quentin Godwin. Where is Quentin? Is he still alive? It's about his mother not giving up on him, and it's about the missing people choir, who you may not have heard of. So, going to be interesting. So from Wikipedia here, so if we take a look at Wikipedia, it is Titirangi is where this case takes place. Titirangi is a suburb in the Waitakere ward of the city of Auckland in northern New Zealand. It is an affluent residential suburb located 13 kilometres, which is about 8 miles, to the southwest of the Auckland city centre at the southern end of the Waitakere Ranges. In the Māori language, Titirangi means long streaks of cloud in the sky, but this is often given as fringe of heaven. That's so beautiful. So we'll look at a map here, and this is Auckland. Hopefully you can see it. And if we zoom in, not out, which I always do, this is where Titirangi is located. So this article first is from stuff.co.nz. It's an interactive and it is absolutely amazing. The information in it is amazing. So we're going to go with that. What happened to Q? And the mystery of what happened to teenager Quentin, Q as he likes to be called, Godwin, has become more baffling as time has gone on. The teenager left his West Auckland home for work in 1992, then vanished. Self-harm or misadventure has longly seemed the most likely explanation, but new information suggests something more sinister. So this is Kelly Dennett and David White who made this, so big shout out to them. Beautiful family. The time when Sarah Godwin's world spun off its axis started with a note that May of 1992 her son Quentin left his bush-flanked home and never returned. That his remains at the very least have never been found has confused and frustrated his family, particularly Sarah, who never given up hope of finding her son. For decades the family of 8 has lived not knowing what happened to Quentin, known to all as just Q, who was due to start work at his local supermarket that night, but never arrived. Godwin's search has reached its 28-year anniversary, and I think this is, I couldn't find a date, but I'm pretty sure it's 2017 that this was released. Oh no, up in 1992. Sorry, I can't find a date when it's released. That's alright. That's an awful long time not to know what happened to your son, she says. I've worked constantly to try and find out what might have happened to him. I'm absolutely tenacious about getting to the bottom of this because I feel there are people in New Zealand who know what happened to Q. Q was 18 and living near the small village of Titirangi in West Auckland. The middle child in a large blended family, Q was in his final year of high school at Linfield College. After a break to study forestry in Rotorua, he was curious and fun, raised in a happy, active home. Their backyard was the sprawling Waitakere Ranges. Q's birth father lived at Albany Centrepoint, and Q was raised by his mother and stepfather, Steve, from about the age of 4. His relationship with his birth father was a bit thorny. While Q adored his family and was particularly close to his mum, he suffered from self-doubt. He had bipolar disorder and smoked Mary J. His moods were up and down, and while he was social and had a lot of friends, they noted he appeared troubled sometimes. Sometimes strange. He'd received outpatient treatment for manic episodes. Just a brief reminder that every person deserves to have their story told, no matter what they did or what matter they're into. And if you comment below anything nasty or victim shame or blame, I will remove it straight away. Please keep the comments nice and kind, because you just don't know what family members might be reading them. So let's keep going. Q was burdened. A drink driving incident on his birthday the year before saw him crash and injure a former flatmate. They fell out and Q was charged, but failed to show for court. A warrant was issued for his arrest. While self-harm or misadventure have long been the prevailing theories about what happened to Q, in 2014, 3 women alleged a former schoolfriend had confessed to being in a car that had struck and killed him. The men were said to have panicked and buried him. Staff has investigated this scenario and examined other theories put forward by police. That he suffered an accident or became lost, that he started a new life, or that he died by S. Each is plausible, but uncertainty reigns. Last scene. Steve recalls one of his last conversations with Q was in the days before his disappearance. It was a bit grey and overcast, and I really remember sitting down with Q on the sofa, he said. He was searching really for who he was, how he was going forward, and what he was going to do. And afterwards I thought, because Q hadn't been easy and he was really considering his path as a young man, it was a really nice talk. A little bit of the timeline. On May the 20th, 92, Q went to school as normal at Linfield College. At 2:30 p.m, a friend of the family saw him walking along nearby Boylan Road. Expressionless was what they suggested. She greeted him, but he said nothing. Half an hour later, Q phoned a friend who said Q seemed reasonably normal. So you get a couple of different stories, and you really can't say what Q was feeling, really. The alarm wasn't raised until the following morning, when his sister went to get him up for school and discovered his sleeper empty, and a lengthy note was in there. Q had written that he had, quote, made up my mind to rid myself of this world, I should say. He said he'd, quote, failed to be able to fit in with the rest of this society. It ain't easy being a misfit, and after a while you just withdraw into a recluse, incapable of functioning normally. It seems that no matter how hard I try to trust myself and trust others, I just don't cope. Q made a point of saying that Mary J and magic mushies had, quote, sapped my brain and body. He was, quote, not normal anymore. A fear is what governs me. Okay, so that's quite a worrying note, and I can see why some people would jump to the S theory quickly after their note. But it didn't exactly say that he was going to do anything. I don't know, that's weird. Let's have a look into it. Theory 1 is the S theory. The note was the strongest clue the family had about Q's disappearance, but then and now, aspects of this theory trouble them. Neither Edwards nor Godwin, his mum or stepdad, or his stepbrother Chris instinctively believe he could have. Chris thinks Q was scared of sharks in the water. Well, it was the first time Q had completely disappeared. Just 5 days earlier, he had left a similar note found by his brother. But he returned home, reporting to the driver who ferried him from Piha that he intended to jump off Lion Rock but had chickened out. Certainly gives more
reason to think that this may be the answer. Edwards took Q's disappearance seriously, quickly reporting it to police. Edwards says the police were good and the community quickly began searching. They focused on the Waitakere coastline after those reports of Q heading towards Piha. And I've done a video on Piha and the many people that have gone missing in that area. Ilwa Roland, the French student, and a couple of girls have got missing in that area. Very, very strange. But there were multiple possible sightings of Q, even after the time he had reportedly hitchhiked to Piha. At 12:30 p.m. on May 21st, a local saw a man of Q's description with a, quote, slightly pleading face. I'm not quite sure what a pleading face looks like, so that's interesting. And that was on Scenic Drive, 12 kilometres from his home. Another witness, Miss Reed, said she was, quote, 95% sure she saw Q walking along Huia Road toward Woodland Park that same night at 11 p.m. She said he looked depressed. Also, again, how can you tell someone's depressed? Yeah, I don't know. Edwards is emotional, recalling the realisation he had to tell Sarah that Q was missing. She was in England visiting her parents. He'd put the overseas call off and on the instinct that Q would turn up. And I can understand, waiting a bit, thinking, oh no, it's going to be all right, it's going to be all right. He said, I had a strong feeling, actually, that Q didn't have it in him to top himself. He said, I thought Q's life force was very strong, and I didn't think he would do that. I think because of his depression that he would contemplate it, but knowing the boy, I don't think he could have done it. So I had great confidence that we would find him. We were looking and looking hard. Unbeknown to the family at the time, a counsellor at Q's previous school, Green Bay High, said they'd had a conversation with Q years before his disappearance, where Q had said he would S in circumstances where he couldn't be stopped or his body found, a plan that didn't involve the sea. The council believed it wasn't an immediate one. They didn't report it to the police until many years later, and Sarah only learned of it from the Coroner inquest. So some more things pointing to that theory, and even though he'd mentioned it years and years before, doesn't mean that he was thinking it at that time, but it certainly looks worse for this theory. If he had died at Piha, would his body have washed up? And we touched on this earlier. So many people have gone missing in Piha and haven't been found. So many people have died at Piha in the water and their bodies have washed up. So, I don't know. University of Auckland academic Dr. Jonathan Webber is in the middle of a study that could answer this. There are a few studies on how long it takes for bodies to wash up. Many have been carried out overseas in different environments. Webber is analysing about 250 New Zealand drownings to find average timings, taking into consideration ethnicity, weight and gender. Webber is a lifeguard and a long-time Piha resident, and he and others named the drowning of Warriors player Sunny Fay at Bethells Beach in 2009 as an instance where a person could drown and their body not be recovered. In Fay's case, he was known to have been swimming, so that his remains were never found is less of a mystery. He says it's harder for people to intentionally drown themselves from the beach. They have tricky surf conditions to contend with, and people's survival instinct kicks in. So those who jump off a high point are likely to suffer severe injuries, possibly making it harder to recover them. Bodies that go missing in the surf at West Coast beaches tend to travel north. Webber's study findings are months away, but anecdotally, he said, I can say with 30 years experience, if someone drowned at Piha right now, I'd expect them to be found somewhere north, Bethells or towards the Kaipara Harbour within the next 3 to 10 days. So that's interesting to hear what he thinks and how he thinks people would survive or whether bodies would be found. This interactive thing is amazing. They've done such an amazing job. Theories 2 and 3. Voluntary disappearance, maybe misadventure. Q loved the outdoors and was comfortable in it, but his backyard, the Waitakere Ranges, are immense even for the seasoned tramper. Spanning 28,000 hectares of bush, it's a hiker's paradise, and Q and his family regularly went walking there. By May of 92, Q wasn't driving, and said he hitchhiked, walked or cycled. His mum and stepfather's initial instinct was that Q had taken some time out to get his head together. He was known for taking flight when he was on a high. While the various possible sightings of Q in and around the bush in the 48 hours after he was last seen supported the possibility, credible sightings after this time dried up. A series of strange phone calls, though, in the years afterward raised hope. In October 93, a woman calling herself Marissa, claiming to be Q's wife, made contact, purportedly, which is a funny word I've never heard before, from a phone box in Invercargill. She relayed they had a 1-year-old child named Jackie Elizabeth Godwin. Police traced the call to the Auckland City Council Library on Grays Avenue. Their checks with social services found nobody called Jackie or Marissa Godwin. Who on earth does this to a grieving family? What messed up mind would you have to do this to a grieving family? Just absolutely horrible. In 1995, another call was made from Wiri, a South Auckland address, from a woman claiming to be Q's wife. Both women said Q didn't want to make contact but they felt his family should know. Godwin treated them with some credibility. Little did the callers know that 2 weeks before his disappearance, Q told a friend he had got someone pregnant. His family didn't hear about this until much later. They have no idea who Q might have been referring to. Police traced the last call, but the home's occupants denied it. The police said, well, it's impossible that it didn't come from this house. We could take them to court for misuse of a telephone or let it go. So what do I do with that, Sarah said. The caller sounded Kiwi, young, fairly genuine. It's always been on my mind, if it wasn't a genuine call, why would somebody do something like that? She wasn't asking for money. So it appears there's no motive or no monetary motive for people to do that. So what sick satisfaction do they get out of that if it's a hoax and not true? With posters across the country with their number, the family were targets. One boy even phoned pretending to be Q. Disgusting, New Zealanders. Disgusting. If Q is alive today, he would be 46, but if he had disappeared voluntarily, he would have had a tough time starting over. His bank account hasn't been touched, and he hasn't left the country under his own name. And would he have the know-how to leave the country under his own name? Would he have the know-how at 18 to start a new life without using his bank account and ID and so forth? Q wasn't the sort of person who was away from his family. He didn't hate us. We didn't have any rows. He was very reliant on me in particular, from his mum. While it's possible he had an accident or became disoriented in the bush and died, that his body has never been found has long been a sticking point. Sir Bob Harvey is adamant people just don't vanish. The 79-year-old was elected mayor of the former Waitakere City Council a few months after Q left home for the last time. The former lifeguard often took part in searches for missing people. He recalls one man's skeleton was found in the Waitakeres 3 decades after he was last seen, but thinks it's rare for people to be lost forever. Search and rescue is very sophisticated. We're not talking about 1930s New Zealand, Harvey said. It's rare for bodies to go undiscovered because there's a lot of trampers, walkers, hikers. It's a city of 1 million people. There are trails. But, I disagree, because on this channel we've had a lot of people go missing and nothing is ever found, even after decades. Other experts say it's unusual but not improbable for a body to be irrecoverable. One experienced search and rescuer says not to underestimate how much of the bush is untracked. There's huge areas where you'd never go to. If somebody did for whatever reason, it's quite feasible they would never be discovered. You could be 100 metres from the road in the bush and not be found simply because somebody would never walk there. And I definitely actually agree with that statement, for sure. So let's look at theory 4, foul play. There is a final possibility. In 2014, an inquest into Q's disappearance went ahead before Coroner Deborah Marshall, despite Sarah's disapproval, and we might cover the coroner's inquest in another article. The inquest publicity brought forward an anonymous tipster who, mid-hearing, told police a friend had confessed to her family years earlier that Q had been accidentally struck by a car and then buried by 4 men at Langholm Beach. There is confusion around the location of the alleged collision, with both the beach and the lower Nehutupu Dam named as the location. The sites are close though, about 4 kilometres, a couple minutes drive apart. The latter was a popular area for drinkers and drivers to congregate. So I've actually never heard of these places. So that's his address, and they're definitely around that area. Godwin, his mum, says police were tight-lipped about the information and didn't appear to be giving it any credence. In 2015, one of the women who claimed to have heard the confession made contact with Sarah directly. The woman, who was fearful for her safety and didn't want to be identified, no longer lives in New Zealand, but grew up in West Auckland and went to school with Q. She remembers him fondly and was aware of his disappearance. Which is why, when another school friend came to her home to have coffee with her, her mother and her sister, she says she was shocked to hear him saying he knew something about Q's disappearance. In a later statement to police, she alleges the man told her he had, quote, a secret. They were doing burnouts, and then from out of nowhere, Quentin just jumped out in front of the car and they hit him. So this is obviously the place, and you can see the evidence of hoons, I should say, hoons and burnouts and such. They said they killed him, and they then decided they thought they'd get in trouble for doing it, and even though they said he jumped in front of the car, they decided to bury him. And I can't remember exactly word for word, but for some reason he said it was light bush, whether that be left or right. But they dragged him off to the side of the beach where there was light shrub and buried him, and that was it. She told police she interpreted the tale as a, quote, cry for help. She said, I asked him why you hadn't said something about this, and the bro code was sort of the answer. We were just a bit dumbfounded, to be honest, and yeah, quite upset us. The women were rattled, and seeing the publicity about the inquest, decided to come forward. Identities of the men, all around the same age as Q at the time, have been provided to staff. One was known in the community at the time and is understood to be a senior member of a gang. Another is in custody awaiting trial for domestic violence matter, which was due to be heard when the pandemic lockdowns began. Staff has been unable to speak to him because of this, and a third man is untraceable. The fourth man lives in West Auckland and was a former friend of Q's. The man, whose staff can't name for legal reasons, is eager to talk, and he's also quick to dispel the claim that he has anything to do with his former friend's disappearance. Now in his 40s, he says he's a full-time caregiver for his children. He admits to being a ratbag in his youth, like I guess all of us have been, and early adult years, but reckons he's turned his life around. He said he and Q used to drink and chase after girls. They spent time at Langholm Beach and the lower Nehutupu Dam. They were close enough that he recalls being invited to Q's home, though Sarah doesn't remember meeting him, which is not odd. I mean, when my boys were growing up, there were so many in and out of the house, I couldn't tell you half of them. The first he heard of claims of an accident was when a friend, one of the men named as being in the car with him, was interviewed by police. He said apparently someone rang in and made a ridiculous, absurd statement. I can't think who would have it in for us. He was expecting to be questioned, but police never contacted him and he never volunteered. He's horrified that Q's family think he was involved. So it's a bit of a worry that we're hearing the police didn't follow up on this theory. It's the job of police, I think, to be open-minded to any theory or any evidence and to investigate, That's what police do, but maybe not. This guy said, I understand what it's like to have kids and you love your kids. Now I can't think of anything worse than one of your children dying before you. There is one thing worse, and that's not knowing. That would eat me up, and if I had a part in his disappearance, I obviously would have got some way to tell them I would do that. He says, as I'm getting older, things like that are really important to me. Your word is your honour. I try and be like that because it's monkey see, monkey do with the kids. I feel very strongly about things like that. I just can't imagine what his mum must be going through, They say time heals, but no way, that would be so horrible. So he's a good person now. Was he a good person back then? And what happens when good people accidentally hit someone and freak out and panic? Just saying. He said prior to Q's disappearance, they had drifted apart, describing Q's mental health issues, and didn't find out sometime later that he was missing. He had his own theories about what happened to Q. Beautiful pictures. He said Quentin had pictures of Mary J out in the bush in the Waitakaris. This is just pure assumption, but our two best guesses was that somebody had stumbled across his plantation or he stumbled across someone else's. So, putting in another theory, he disputes that he's ever made a confession and that any suggestion he was was a misunderstanding, that he was simply recounting rumours that had circulated in the community. He asked staff to put him in touch with Q's family so he could reassure them himself. He said, you have my word, I had nothing to do with it. After several false starts, his stepdad was eventually able to meet him, but rather than finding closure, he came away exasperated. He said, quote, he couldn't understand how the information is out there. I think he's lying. The man said he would provide documentation that would show that when Q went missing, he was either on remand in Mount Eden prison or in drug rehab. He hasn't furnished that. Whether he invented the whole story from the start, that's anybody's guess. It's a strange position to put yourself in. Despite saying he'd never been interviewed by police, an email shows the former officer in charge of the case, Detective Senior Sergeant Steve Sultan, say that 10 times fast, telling Sarah Godwin's UK police liaison that 3 of the men named as being in the vehicle were spoken to. She believes police have interviewed the wrong man. There is a man with the same name and of similar age whose stuff has identified in prison. Godwin's compiled a lengthy document of why she believes this, but police declined to discuss it. How frustrating for this poor family. There's just so much going on. Emails show during the course of his investigation, Sultan visited Langholm Beach, but concluded if a body had been buried there, it would have been discovered due to the construction of several homes in the intervening decades. Writing to the mum's liaison, he notes a thorough search would require felling trees and excavation, which they weren't willing to do without a specific burial site. In another email, Sultan appears to give the story of a confession credence, noting the initial informant, quote, did not see the incident happen, she was only told about it. Waitemata Police Detective Inspector John Sutton declined an interview and refused to comment on particular parts of the investigation. He said police had investigated considerably, including an extensive search of Huia by search and rescue. Whew, stuff going on. 28 years is a long time for any family to be waiting for answers about a loved one, and our hearts go out to them. Anyone with information about Quentin's disappearance can contact police, and I will have that information on screen shortly. Sarah Godwin is disappointed police inquiries haven't uncovered anything new. She finds the claims of a confession to be credible. Given Q was known to frequent the dam and often being on foot, the scenario is plausible to her. It would explain why Q's body has never been found. She's had much contact with the woman whose stuff spoke to. For me, it's just good to know if the story is true, and if it's not true, why did he tell it? yeah, oh gosh, this poor family, just so many stories and so many theories, and no one knows who's credible and who's lying. Oh, it must be awful. In declaring Q deceased in 2014, Coroner Marshall considered there was not enough evidence to say what had happened, unless new evidence emerged, and that Q was presumed lost or irrecoverable. His mum, Sarah, has spoken very eloquently in the media about the heartbreak that results when a child is missing. The uncertainty is devastating. Sarah has never given up on the search for her son, and although this finding will be unwelcome to her, I have no doubt she will continue her search. I wish Quentin's family well, said Coroner Marshall. Hope. When the stakes are high, you'll do anything. In the days after Q went missing, a desperate mum and stepfather enlisted the help of a local water diviner who claimed he could find Q. We've talked about diviners in another video, but diviners are those, I think, are those guys that have the sticks, and when they walk over places and there's something underneath the ground, then the sticks like move together or something like that. You can call it grasping at straws, but it seemed like such a real thing. His stepfather said, I went well prepared. I went with a whole bunch of maps, a big map of New Zealand, and said, okay, let's track him down. As the water diviner went on, the maps got smaller and smaller with more granular detail, houses and tracks, until they appeared to be following Quentin all the way up to Opua in the Bay of Islands, where he would go and then stop. It was like he was hitchhiking, Edward said. The diviner purported to track Q up to Russell, then Long Bay, and over to the other side of the peninsula. The peninsula, where Q had a great aunt. So yeah, Opua is a long way, very long way. So we thought, oh, he's gone to check in with her. It was just the sort of thing he could have done, he said. Stepfather left Titirangi at 4 a.m. the next day at breakneck speed in my old sub. I'd phoned the old aunt and got the name of the farmer at the end of the road. I phoned the farmer and said, look at this situation, we think there's a young man who's on your land. And the farmer said, no problem, there will be a 4-wheel drive motorcycle, it will have the keys in it, you just come straight there. Really good, that's so nice. Edward says, I was on that motorcycle all over the farm chasing bloody rainbows. He ended the day in the lounge of the Duke of Marlborough Hotel next to the fire. He said, I went and bought myself a big whiskey. There were 2 sofas there, one couple on one and me on the other, and the TV was on. And I said to them, do you mind if I turn that off? I've had a hard day. They said, no problem. They were American, and they said, why have you had such a hard day? And I said, well, here's the story for you, and I just dumped it on them, and they just sat there and listened to me. And they said, well, that's an amazing story, now listen to this one. And they said, 5 years ago, our son vanished, and they said they'd given up. One night they went to investigate a noise in their driveway. They said, and it was their son, a sort of skeleton, he was alive, but he was a shadow of the boy that we knew. He'd been living in a cardboard box behind the hills of San Francisco on his own, miles away. He'd finally came back after all that time and crawled into the boat where they found him. Wow, it just blew me away. It was like, all of a sudden that hope came back. So this couple's son went missing, but they found him again many, many years later. He had been depressed and he had gone to become a social worker and got quite a good degree and helped all sorts of young people, and he was just a fine young chap, and they were very proud of him. How would you feel? I just remember being totally knocked over by that. Wow, what a coincidence that he meets these people who have been through something similar on that horrible day for him, and they give him a bit of hope with their story. He said, it just gave me hope, real hope. These things happen, something like that. It was a sign. Anything could happen now. Godwin maintained her search for her son, even from a distance. A few years after Q's disappearance, she relocated to the UK. She has maintained contact with Waitemata Police, who hold the open case file, and was her own liaison officer in the UK. She started a website, Q is Missing, and is a member of the charity Missing People. In 2011, she spoke to Britain's Parliament about the horrors families of missing people endure. In 2017, she joined a television special of Britain's Got Talent as part of the Missing People Choir and sang I Miss You to an audience and judges including Simon Cowell. And we're going to have a bit of a look at this Missing Persons Choir or Missing People's Choir and what happened on that program shortly. Every so often, she reminds Te Turangi's Facebook community that Q is still missing. She regularly rallied media. She said it feels pretty horrible the way it is. All I want to do is find out the answers, find his remains, and have some answers to our questions. It's not just me, it's our family. She says, please, if you can help us, we're not looking for revenge, we just want answers. So there's some information here about where you can ring the Waitemata Police 09839 0600. You can email Sarah at quismissing.com, and there's also places here where you can get help if you have mental health issues or if this is a trigger. All this information will be in the description box below, so all the show notes. If you have any information about the cases that I cover, please call Crimestoppers 0800 555 111. You can call police on 105 or contact your local police station. Email me at nzmissing@gmail.com, and please go and join our Facebook. We have an amazing Facebook community. They share these stories around and that it's just amazing. I couldn't do it without them. I want to give a huge shout out to Jackie, who shouted me a coffee. Thank you, Jackie. She said it's a little to go towards a new PC. It'll take me a bit to get something that's decent. I also want to thank Kaya Rose for her ongoing donation. Guys, it's so appreciated. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/nzmysteries if you want to help. There's other ways to do donations. Everything's going to be in the description box below or in the show notes if you're on podcast. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit notification bell to all so you get any updates or videos, and please share this where you can. I appreciate each and every one of you. Let's move on. So we are on Wikipedia, and it is telling us a little bit about the Missing People Choir. The Missing People Choir, also known as the Voices for Missing Choir, is a British group made up of people with missing loved ones, alongside Eclipse Choir members and supporters of the charity Missing People. The choir participated in the 2017 series of Britain's Got Talent and finished 8th. Their participation in the television show resulted in the location of multiple missing persons who were then reunited with their families. In addition to emotional expression and support, choir members hope to reach people who may have information about those who are missing. Their performances include showing their names and faces to the audience. After the televised performance, a missing boy called his mother after seeing her singing in the choir. Another missing person was reunited with their family, and information was also received about 2 others. Such an awesome thing, and it must be really good to have that support with other people who have been through the same thing. It's such a wonderful thing. I'm just going to have a look more into this. Stuff.co.nz again. Missing for 25 years. Mum sings on Britain's Got Talent to raise awareness of West Auckland cold case. This was 2017. The mother of a teenager who went missing in West Auckland 25 years ago has paid tribute to her son on Britain's Got Talent. On May 20, 1992, Quentin walked out the door of his Te Turangi home after telling his family he was heading to school. No, he wasn't. He was heading to his after-school job. He never came back. As part of the Missing People Choir, his mother Sarah appeared on British television to plead for more information about her son's disappearance. The show aired on Saturday night UK time. He just walked away from the family home one afternoon after school and was never seen again, she told viewers. The choir is made up of parents and family members of missing people. I'm not going to play any of it because I don't want to get any copyright strikes, but of course I will have the links below so that you can come here yourself and have a look. The Missing People Choir sung I Miss You, a song left judges and members of the audience in tears. Images and details about the group's missing family members appeared on screen during the performance. The group's lead said he hoped someone would know something about at least one of the missing people. The choir was a support mechanism for the families. Godwin said having the support of each other makes us stronger, sitting here together makes us stronger, and singing together makes us super strong. She had since moved back to England after her son's disappearance. She told the British Parliament in 2011 about the struggles, confusion and guilt families with missing children go through. Speaking to media in 2011, she said Quentin had left behind a letter which could be read as a S note, and the police stepped in and did as much as they could. The coroner declared Quentin dead July 2014. His cause of death was unknown and no body had been found. His mother maintained Quentin may still be alive. After the coroner's report, she wrote, "So the coroner has decided that on the balance of probabilities, he has either taken his own life or come to an untimely end somehow. Yes, that's obviously a possibility, but with absolutely no proof, it isn't enough reason for me to believe he is dead. There are too many questions unanswered." She hoped that in 2017 she amplified efforts to find what happened to her son. She wrote on her website dedicated to Q, "The Britain's Got Talent judges applauded the choir's bravery and strength for singing about their missing family members. With unanimous approval, they got through to the next round." Very strong mum, and you can see that she never is going to give up hope that she's going to find her boy, no matter how old he is or where he is. She's going to keep going. Let's move on again. I was really lucky that one of my community members gave me this information that I had not seen for this video, and in good time, so it was good. So this is regarding someone who requested information under the official information request. That's what I'm trying to say. And the request was refused by police, and I just want to read a couple of things out. So, dear Minister of Police, dear Paula Bennett, 25 years ago on the 20th of May, my only son Quentin went missing at age 18 and to this day has not been seen since. In November of 2015, a woman emailed my ex-wife in England saying that my son was killed at the Huia dam site out in Western Auckland. 3 young men were present at Quentin's death. The woman reported in her email, my son was killed by a car accident and his body thrown in the bushes to hide it. The Henderson police located the woman and 2 of the remaining men, who she named, and interviewed them. One of the 3 men died some 10 years ago. The 2 remaining men are known to the police. Detective Sultan will not give me the names of these 2 remaining men, he says, for legal reasons. At one point in my emailing with Sultan, he said he could not sanction me doing police work. I consider I have every right to be able to locate these 2 men and appeal to them to put a pinpoint on a map that would allow me to find my son's body. That would contrast hugely in my mind with a police officer in uniform standing over these guys with the hope of getting confessions to be accessories to a scene where my son got killed. My wife in England will not help me. They are a bit estranged. All I want are the 2 men's names and, if possible, addresses to help me track them down. Then I can do a thorough search of a small area out at Huia and finally get some closure for myself and my ex-wife in England as well. Quentin was a very troubled boy, and I would like to bless him in person if I can find his remains. I'm still very capable of doing the search. Very interesting. So this obviously is coming from his biological father, from what I can tell. And it's showing that he is believing the accident theory and trying to get information about these people who supposedly hurt his son. Let's see if we can have a look at the response. I understand that you have requested the Minister of Police for the release of information that police hold in relation to the disappearance of your son Quentin. This information will not be disclosed. The investigation into Quentin's disappearance is not closed, and should further information come to hand and the males you refer to have to be contacted, then your intervention could cause problems for the police investigation. Also, the reason that these males' names came to the police was through a third party. Should that be disclosed, then that person's safety could be at risk. I'm sorry that we can't help you with this matter, but under S5 of the Privacy Act, the police are bound by this act. Okay, so we know at least that his father is interested in trying to find out what happened to his son, and quite frankly, if that was me, I would be doing the same thing, trying to find out what happened to my son as well. I'm going to look at one more article, and that's about the inquest, coroner's inquest. So let's have a look. Inquest news a blow for mother, and this was released 2014. This here is an age progressed image of what Quentin might look like now. So let's take a look. Sarah Godwin's son has been missing for 21 years, but she is sure she will see him again. At 4:30 p.m. on May 20th, 1992, Quentin, 18, walked out of his house in Titirangi, West Auckland. He was heading to his after-school job at a local supermarket. He never showed up and hasn't been seen since. There were sightings of the teenager known to his family and friends as Q, and there have been countless theories tabled over the years about what happened to him and why. Mrs. Godwin has never given up hope that her son is alive, safe and well, and is missing by choice. So when she was notified that an inquest was to be held, which would declare Mr. Godwin legally dead, she was devastated. The news of the inquest came as a complete surprise and not a welcome one, just before Christmas, she said. She said, I do not want or need a death certificate and am upset that the police are taking these steps so abruptly. Quentin's case has been an open file for 21 years. In a missing persons case, once police have exhausted all avenues of investigation and believe the person is dead, they can refer the case to the coroner for a ruling. If the coroner is satisfied that it is likely the missing person is dead and their body is destroyed, lost, or cannot be recovered, an inquest will be held. Mrs. Godwin said, it isn't a procedure that I personally want or need. If the coroner concludes there is enough evidence to assume he is dead and issues a death certificate, I don't feel it will mean anything. There is no proof he is dead, so any conclusion along those lines will be based on circumstantial evidence. This won't bring any closure, because for me it's not conclusive and won't answer any of the questions as to what happened with Quentin after he left home. She is not put off by the fact that her son suffered from bipolar disorder or by a note he left which intimated he intended taking his own life. It has been rumoured that Mr. Godwin travelled to Australia or Thailand, got married and became a father in 92. Police have found no evidence to support that. Mrs. Godwin says hardly a day goes by when I don't think about him in some way. I have had many thoughts and imaginings over the years, but I think the most likely scenario is that he has found a place to settle in some rural area of New Zealand, probably living under an assumed name and hopefully with people around who care about him. He always loved gardening, so it's possible he's working in that sort of environment. Mr. Godwin, Q, was born in England, the second of four and the only son. The family moved to New Zealand when he was 2. Mrs. Godwin returned to England 2 years after her son went missing and works as a charity fundraiser. It's always awesome when families have this unimaginable loss and stuff going on, and then they turn it around and they get involved in charities and helping other people going through the same thing. I think that's really amazing. It's a great thing. She is heavily involved with the charity Missing People and joined Madeline McCann's mother Kate on a campaign to get more support from the British government for families of the disappeared. So Sarah's Godwin's thoughts on her son. She said, I do think he's still alive and will do so unless there is actual proof otherwise. I think as his mother I'd have a gut feeling if he was dead now. It's not unusual for people who have been missing long term to find it very hard, impossible even, to make contact again. There are all sorts of reasons like guilt, shame, frightened, unsure of their reconnection with family, thinking maybe their family is better off to have forgotten them, and more. I feel that Quentin will be feeling any or all of these emotions. Basically, where do you start after so long apart? I want Quentin to know that we do think of him constantly and really miss him. He is part of the family always. I'd love to tell him family news about his nephews and nieces, sisters and his stepbrother. If he ever feels like making contact, there will be no pressures to do or say more than he wants. For me personally, I just want to know how he is and where he is. Obviously, my deepest wish is to be able to talk together and one day to meet again, when the timing is right and we could get to know each other again. I hope someone with any information could find a way to let me know. Wow, this is a long one, and if you're still with me, I really appreciate it. I know I make mistakes, and I'm trying to get better, so I appreciate the support. What do you think happened? There's so many theories here. Obviously, his dad believes the accident theory. His mum believes that he's still alive. There's no evidence to support any theory at all. Not that he took his own life, not that there had been an accident, not that he's still alive. So I don't know with this one, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Please be nice though, because if some of the family read the comments, I don't want to hurt them. Thank you so much for sticking with me again, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks very much, guys. See you later.